This is gonna be a video about the Infamous series. The Infamous series has a series of games where you had superpowers, and it's like a third-person action open world game, right? You had various upgrades, you had various collectibles, you had various, side missions, story points, etc. The main gist of Infamous is that you're like this thing called a conduit. So, like a conduit is able to drain certain type of elemental elements, right? So, for example, early on, you gain the power of electricity, right? Later on, you gain ice, napalm, and then eventually in the actual reboot, you gain concrete abilities, smoke abilities, etc. So these powers are changed, variously through upgrades, progression. Obviously, a super abilities, etc. Right? And the main gist of it is that these powers come from these elements, right? So electricity, for example, you have to drain electricity from where it is. For example, Infamous One, Infamous Two, you have to drain it from, let's say, like a light pole, or like from some sort of a fuse box, or some sort of a substation, or car, a battery, electric wire, etc. Right? So these powers come from the actual elements like in the world, right? Infamous Second Son is a little bit different because you gain smoke abilities. Smoke will come from chimneys or burnt out cars, etc. Right? So yeah. So Infamous, though, like, you had various types of offensive abilities. So for example, you would have the main zap ability, right? Infamous One, Infamous Two, the zap ability. You can actually change these types of projectiles, right? Infamous Two, it was very easy, right? You would gain a more faster zap, or a powerful zap, or some sort of a rail gun type zap, etc. Right? You also had these electric grenades. You had these electric rockets. You had as well electric blast, a shockwave. You had this electric pushover, so it can literally push enemies down. Electric zip lines, all different types of powers, right? And as well, you know, Infamous One and Two, you could also summon a lightning, like from the sky. It was very cool, right? You could either summon like a mini tornado, or like a mini ice storm, etc. Right? So yeah, Second Son, same type of idea, like in the reboot, except it's just different elemental powers, right? Smoke, you gain smoke, neon, which is like this luminescence light, and as well concrete, etc. Right? So yeah. So these powers change over time, right? Through upgrades, right? Upgrades, progression, right? As you progress further like in the story, are you gonna gain access to more upgrades, abilities, etc. The Infamous series, what was very unique about it is that you had this karma system, or a morality system. So I could either play as good or bad. I could either play. So being a good meant that like you had, you were seen as a people to like a hero, or like somebody to look up upon, right? Being evil, I meant that like you're more of like an outlaw. You take matters into your own hands, etc. Right? So yeah. For the most part, though, morality choices would actually dictate this. So there's certain choices in the game. You could go with the evil path or the good path, right? And the evil path, good path, right? So evil, being good, it affected the visual representation, like of your powers, right? So the visual representation is, early on, like in Infamous One, Infamous Two, if you're good, you had blue lightning. But like if you no if you're bad, you had red lightning, or orange lightning, right? So yeah, the visual representation, like the powers change. Infamous Second Son, like when you're evil, I believe the skies and the environments look slightly, different, like in its coloration, etc., saturation, and yeah. So yeah, being good, being bad also meant that certain specific side missions that would be open for you, right? So for them, between both walkthroughs, like you had good side missions, evil side missions, default side missions as well. Default side missions meaning that they're available for both playthroughs, right? So yeah, being a bad meant that you only had access to specific bad side missions, and being good meant that like you only had access to certain good side missions, etc. So the side missions, they change over time, right? Certain, for example, being good, there's one a good side missions like in Infamous 2 where you have to heal like a group of people, so you can use your powers to heal people, right? Or there'll be like a certain evil, I don't know, quest or like a task where you got to take out these evil these protesters or whatever, right? Even though the protesters are innocent people, right? So yeah, so, evil, being bad, right, affected the representation, like your powers, which is very cool as well. You could even go into, the evil upgrade. So, for example, like an evil upgrade would be drain ability, like the super badass drain ability. So you could drain multiple enemies, like in a certain area, right? Draining abilities basically gave you a restored like your health, right? But it meant that killing the enemy, killing the enemy, right? And yeah, morality choices. Infamous One had this big morality choice. Spoilers, so spoilers. A morality choice in that like you can either choose to save like a group of doctors, right? In one building, or you could choose to save like your ex, a girlfriend, like any other building, right? So, choosing the life of a few versus the many, right? So yeah, that was that was like one of the evil choices, morality choices in the first game, So yeah, Infamous to Infamous like as well is has obviously like a story. So the conduits, right? The conduits, they're kind of like mutants, right? Except the conduits are a lot more, you know, how they're created. Like is a lot worse. So basically, like there's this ray sphere, and the ray sphere activates conduit powers only in those that have the conduit genes. So like if you're like a regular human, the this blast this a ray sphere blast or whatever, it's going to kill you. So that's why it's called infamous, right? You're famous for something that went wrong, even though like, it's not really your fault, right? Infamous One, Infamous Two focus heavily like in the ray sphere. You had another thing called the RFI. You had the Beast, right? There's certain areas, there's gonna be certain areas of of a society that actually rejects conduits, right? They hate them, right? Infamous Second Son, which is like the reboot, which takes place 7 years. It's kind of like some sort of future event where conduits are being hunted down and they're seen as terrorists and these bad people, right? So it's kind of like it kind of reminds me like a little bit of mutants. If you guys are familiar with the X-Men verse, right? But conduits are kind of like mutants in a way, but except conduits are about draining that elemental ability, etc. So the story, there is a time travel, there is like a time jump, there is various, obviously various enemies and you know various challenges like the story, right? The story is also impacted by certain morality choices. So at the end of Infamous 2, there's this big morality choice where you could choose spoilers. So spoilers, like you choose to take on this big decision, which ultimately affects the rest of the series, right? So yeah, but Infamous One, Infamous Two, Infamous Second Son, right? Again, the main fun came from the offensive abilities, morality choices, right? Replayability, and going into two, you had, like I said, collectibles too. Like you had collectibles like in the game. Blast shards, which blast shards literally give you extra capacity, like for your powers, right? Blast shards, and you had I can't remember these blast, artifacts, like in the reboot, right? They were there as well, and as well, infamous. collectibles as well. Infamous, you also had a dead drop. So, a dead drops is like, you would shoot down this one, a mini drone, for example, and then, or I believe it was some sort of AI pigeon, like an AI pigeon, and then this will give you like an extra, like some sort of dialogues, like some radio dialogue for a lore behind the world, right? So extra secrets are behind the world and doctors, etc. And yeah, but side missions too as well. The side missions were very well done. For the most part, like Infamous 2, the side mission, Infamous 1, the side missions weren't too long, weren't too short. They were the right length, right? And story wise as well, the story, both of these, all three of these games, Infamous Second Son being the shortest game, right? Infamous 2 being the second longest, and then 1, I believe, was the longest game, right? So, yeah. So, Infamous as well, you have obviously, a various characters. The characters are going to have different types of motivation. And they're heavily affected by this conduit, by this conduism, this new conduit world. You eventually get these mutated freaks, which were created by the radiation blast, right? And you know, a radiation blast from the actual ray sphere explosion, right? So yeah. So again, the Infamous series, a very fun, very replayable, because you could replay it good versus bad, and then you could go back again and then see how certain choices, how different choices would impact the story differently, etc. Right? And Infamous, it's been almost 10 years since the last Infamous game. I hope we see this franchise again someday. I hope we see it, whether it be like a sequel or like I know we're in the era of remakes, right? Through like some sort of remake, etc. But Infamous, like, it offered a lot. Visually, it was very impressive, especially Infamous 2 for its time. Visually, the art design, the dialogue. Infamous felt like like its own separate universe of, if you guys like a comic book type characters, superheroes. Infamous, I felt like its own separate, standalone superhero universe, right? But it did a very good job in its morality choices, in its story, in the plot, in the writing. Infamous Second Son, the dialogue and the writing kind of falls off a little bit, but still the main gist of the gameplay is there. Offensive gameplay is there. Just a little bit different. Special abilities like a little bit different, like in the reboot, right, etc. And you know, Infamous Second Son taking on bases, right? That was added to as well. So enemy bases were added, and yeah, but there's again tons of side missions, powers, upgrades, abilities, collectibles, right? Lore, like in the world, extra story, and as well DLCs as well. I didn't even mention DLCs. You had DLCs as well. So Infamous 2 had you play like as a vampire. So like a vampire meant that like as the electric guy a Cole, right? So being like a vampire meant that you could teleport, right? Infamous A Second Son had its own DLC, which is about the extra a conduit that was named, what's the name, a fetch, right? That was captured by this new DUP force that's there to hunt down conduits, etc. Right? So yeah. So the DLCs kind of offer like an alternate perspective, or like some sort of a parallel timeline, etc. So yeah, like, share, subscribe. Infamous series. Thanks for watching.